Intro. Brand New Eyes by Paramore is an album that gives meaning and depth to things like relationships and inner thoughts that relate to those types of things. It's able to show a side of something new through a new perspective given the title of the album. It's a good thing that shows new ideas of how things change throughout someone's life. That's one of the themes throughout the album, which is good because it's something that people have to look out for in life, is change. That's one thing people need to look for. Whether that be something like a store in the mall closing to somebody moving, change and looking at things with a new perspective is a good way to approach everything, basically. Now, for this, I was going to talk about a few songs, mainly just the lyrics from some of the songs on the album and probably some of the sounds of it, but just because these are the songs that have the most meaning to their lyrics, in my opinion, and they're like the easiest ones to really talk about. Now, with Ignorance, the chorus is about the idea of leaving because people are growing up and all that stuff, and how people move on through life when they grow up. Things move and people move, and everyone changes their opinion over time. Barely anybody has a static opinion that lives with them forever. People's perspective usually changes the older that people get. That's for many reasons, but some of them is probably the new perspective that people get and the different perspectives. They're more exposed to different things throughout their lifetime that they probably weren't before. So you experience more stuff and then you get more opinions and perspectives. So yours is kind of bound to change after that. The change refers to how the people drift. Some people drift in other directions as they grow up and they have different experiences. This is in the case for how some relationships are, which is the context of the song really. It's about how some people grow up, but some people have a thing like ignorance, which is a different meaning in the song than what it actually is. Ignorance in this song is about the fact that some people can't accept when it might be over between two people. Like they gotta split, but they're not willing to accept that at all. At some points in the song, it's also about how someone themselves moving on and being able to accept things is kind of also difficult in some ways. The song has mentions of things about control over one person, especially with like the lyric, "Don't want to hear your sad songs, I don't want to feel your pain." The controlling aspect can really be two different things because like that lyric kind of like shows that there's empathy but also controlling in a way, and that controlling can be two different things. Being controlled externally and also kind of internally, like your thoughts and all that. Like externally is you can't hang out with that person. I don't like that person. I'm going to shut them off from you. Blocked. Bam. Bang. They're gone. And so it's stuff like that. Your external connections and stuff like that. But internal is like you and yourself. And that's something that's really important to have independence on. Controlling is bad in any form because that's your right to freedom being taken away from you by someone else. And it's also just usually a toxic trait someone has. You go to any YouTube video, you go to any psychology YouTube video, probably from Psych2Go, and they're like, "Whoa, guys, don't be controlling, don't be toxic." Because it is toxic. That's the main thing people are like, "Wow, that really is toxic." It's a unified, yeah, it is toxic opinion. Because why would anybody need to control their friends or their partner if not because there's something wrong with them? It's literally propaganda for a relationship or a reason to stay in a relationship. There's many signs of controlling, though I'm not an expert, so I would always recommend going to someone else's video or somewhere else, someone who's a professional for those, because there's a lot there, and there's too many to list. In the second verse of the song, it's also kind of mentioned how it's good that a toxic cycle ends. You can't have that cycle going over and over again. That's crazy, and that's bad for you. Sometimes it's not easy to accept, as the first lyrics of the verse suggest. Sometimes it is hard to move on, even if someone is bad. That's the human empathy as an empath type deal. This is because of many things and how it's hard sometimes to break a habit. And in some cases, relationships can be seen as habits to people because they're like, oh, I'm used to this. It's like, whoa, that's crazy. You're used to it. And so leaving is also sometimes hard because of this, but also because of how the other person may be, because of different things. Like manipulation of someone's thoughts to make them feel better is one way that they might stay with someone, but there's a lot of psychology stuff behind it, but manipulation to give them a reason to be like, whoa, guys, it's not that bad, when it is that bad. It's like psychology stuff and it's manipulation, but like that's a big reason as to why sometimes people find it hard to leave, like bad relationships. Now, the song The Only Exception tackles the idea of being afraid to jump into a relationship and how some people can sometimes be scared of love. This can happen a lot for a lot of different reasons, but sometimes it's kind of a fear of commitment, like you're going to lose a self of you or some free time you have. Just reasons why people have fears of commitment, basically. It's like kind of a well-known thing. It's not niche, that's for sure. But it also shows that some people are willing to give love a shot, and sometimes they have exceptions for people. It's like the name of the song. Because love is a complicated thing to some people, considering there are a lot of ways to handle it. Some people have different ways of handling that, and that's usually an emotional response, but that's psychological. Some people shun themselves and make themselves more isolated, either by accident or on purpose. But this kind of drives them to not so good places online when you're isolated, and sometimes people have different ways of interacting with different people, and online is one of those ways. So it's like a different type of commitment to some people if they shun themselves. Also in the song, somewhat, is the idea of why love is feared by some people, or at least one of the reasons. That being the idea of a past toxic relationship that was either bad throughout or, it ended badly. It's either or. It puts this they or everyone mentality onto someone that kind of scares some people off when they, put that label on people. Like, whoa, I can't trust you. But it depends on, who it is, because not everyone's the same. The simple version of it is that if you were to have one love in a relationship, but that person was very, very toxic and not good, you may think that's normal for people to act like that, when it's not, just because it's what you've been exposed to. And, being exposed to something like that for the first time is different, because it changes the sense of what normal is for someone, which makes them not have realistic expectations for what love actually is. This kind of shifts the idea of what it is in its entirety. This also could just get them done with the idea of dating, as sometimes it just is like too much for them. It is. I know some people who just had one relationship and now they're kind of like, yeah, nah, that was a little too much. You know, it happens. It happens to some people. Not everyone. That's an important thing to actually know. It doesn't happen to everyone. Just some people who experience it. This could also be from the people around someone as well. In the first verse, it kind of talks about the idea of seeing love from outside yourself and seeing other relationships from a third person-esque perspective. It's like if you see your friends get into relationships, but then maybe, just maybe, there's a lot of fighting in all of them. You kind of would just assume maybe that's normal, since why would I know anything about it? Like, you just see what's happening and you're like, well, it's got to be normal for them, which means it's normal for me, when it really isn't. It's how people pregame information before jumping into something, I guess. Some people view it like how sports players view the major leagues. The mentality of this is how it's supposed to go, so that's what I'll aim for when I get there. But sometimes the idea scares someone away too, which is how you get some people who are afraid of love, but also have never been in like a relationship in some instances, but like not all, because nobody's the exact same as everyone else. It's also like going back to that fear of commitment. It's also because sometimes people are just afraid of what comes afterwards. They have the mentality, the easy mentality that kind of picked up of it's just going to end eventually. This is really built from that fear of commitment as well. As if somebody has that mentality, they also won't care too much about a relationship. It's like why you wouldn't try to save a sinking ship, because that's how it's viewed. You have a sinking ship, you know it's going to go down, you know it's going to go in that ocean, but you're not going to save it because you know it's going to sink, and you have no reason to. You're like, why would I do that? It's going to sink. And so it kind of is like that, where you're not going to try. You're just going to be like, well, whatever. This is also this is easily not the best mentality to have for anything, because you don't live in the moment with this mentality. You're just looking to do things to complete them and say you've done it. Well, guys, I did the thing. Who's proud of me? That's something that you can't really do, and you shouldn't really do in anything, especially things like a relationship, because you don't complete a relationship like that. It's not a video game. Brick by Boring Brick is a song about living in reality and not living in a fantasy that makes you better than how you actually are. Because living in reality is just the better way to do it, rather than people just lying to themselves and building this false ego and an idea off of them that doesn't really show who they truly are. It just shows a facade of who they really are. This is how people often try to escape reality, by having these big dreams and having these unrealistic realities. It's what makes them happy usually. It's like, whoa, guys, I'm doing so much in my little brick castle in my dreams. You don't have a brick castle in real life, bro. And escaping reality is one thing that's like, fine, you can do it from time to time, but you do eventually have to, come back down. You can only daydream for so long. Reality is something that has to be accepted, and it's very hard to change it. So it doesn't make sense to just change it for only your perspective and no one else's. You can't just be like, guys, I just put the crown on myself. Guys, I'm the king now. You can't really be like that, because it's just like, wow, that's a way to build your ego really fast. The whole idea of living in a dream is to try to falsely put yourself above other people in a way that makes you have to avoid your problems more and more the less connected you are to reality. Because there's no perfect reality for anyone. People have problems. You can't avoid them. That's life. That's life. Reality is mentioned in the song as the thing that grounds you and doesn't let you fly off into the clouds or somewhere that isn't realistic or full of like lies, you know. It keeps you grounded because, you know, that's where people walk, that's where people stand. That's where people are most of the time. The last place you would want to be is somewhere surrounded by lies, because then the things promised aren't going to come true. And then they often disappoint people who fall for them. Big promises that seem too good to be true most of the time can only be bound to fail because they are too unrealistic. Without a clear, realistic plan of action, a false dream is often relegated to that. It's just a dream. Because, you know, you can make a dream a reality, but you can't just be like, guys, I suddenly did my dream. No, you didn't, bro. You have a reality. Killing the dream isn't what's needed either, as that just makes people more afraid to chase future dreams. It makes them think a lot of things are unrealistic compared to what's actually unrealistic, because they're like, whoa, guys, I can't bowl a perfect game of 300, even though they probably could if they practiced enough. But, like, they would be like, well, I guess that's unrealistic. And then they would be like, well, I don't know. I don't know if I want to chase any more of my dreams. Just making sure the dream is grounded is one thing that makes people still be able to have dreams, but not be disappointed if they don't come true. Dreams are what guide us after all, but we can't make them out of the glass that can easily be shattered. Because you still have to have something to look forward to in the future. You can't become a nihilist. You have to have dreams. Because with that glass, you have to chase it and you have to build a fortress. But you can't have glass because afterwards that glass is shattered. And when it's shattered, that's when the dreams come crumbling down. And that's when, like, hope is all lost and all that. The song is about seeing things through a different perspective. But that perspective also has to be grounded, at least in some way. It can't be like, guys, I'm up here, you're down there, and I'm your king. Like, a perspective has to be realistic and be, like, based in fact in most of the way. Like, what you know and all that. You can't really lie to yourself. That's unhealthy. A perspective can't be like, I have power over you, and you can't do anything about it, or anything like that, because that's stupid, that's dumb, that's stupid, that's idiotic, and also, that's a crazy power trip. Your ego will be boosted, but your friendships will probably not be. But if you have a perspective like, oh, guys, I'm equal to you, and you're all my friends, and then you kind of hold your hand out, like any image of, like, an angel, then it's not that crazy, because it's like, whoa, we the people can talk to you as an equal without your ego getting in the way or anything. And so it kind of makes it better to interact with people, because ego boosts that are unnatural don't happen like that. And so the perspective makes sense, and it's also probably helpful to other people to see it as well. For the numbers, the album got a decent row of scores, mainly just between the good and the great sections of people's review scores. On Metacritic, it has a 73 out of 100. On AllMusic, it got a 3.5 out of 5 stars, which is about a 7 out of 10. The Rolling Stone gave it a 3 out of 5, which equals a 6 out of 10. And so, you know, overall numbers are in that same ballpark. Like, there's no home runs being hit, but there's no bunts either. So, not too much range on them, but, you know, enough to be like, well, maybe I'll think like that. I'll think like listening to that. Hopefully, you don't go into things like that, but it's just a general consensus that you can get before the album if you do that. But Spin, capital S, gave the album a 4 out of 5, so that's the higher side of that range, because that's an 8 out of 10. But, you know, overall, in the numbers, people thought the album was good to really good. It was able to sell well as people liked the other Paramore albums. You know, when a band is good, you're often going to sell well. I couldn't find the exact number, but just know that the album has sold over 1 million copies since 2016. So it went platinum, which is a high honor for basically any album. So, you know, good for them, rounds of applause. Albums that are good should always sell them and sell good because it lets the label know to actually produce good music and music that people like, and it's not like slop or anything like that. Overall, Brand New Eyes by Paramore is a really good album to listen to if you want some lyrics to analyze or some punk rock music, since you don't hear from those anymore. They don't exist. You don't hear any new punk rock albums come out, which is kind of sad. It's like a dying breed, but it shows that there's good punk rock albums from back in late day. I liked the album, and I think there is a specific amount of people who would like the album. If you haven't heard it yet, I would be surprised. Personally, I would give it a rare 10 out of 10 for an album, because it is really good. It's one of my favorite punk rock albums. If you have different thoughts, you could comment them down below to spread your First Amendment right. But that's about it. So if you want to, you should like and subscribe. Pretty please.